is married to Elimelech. Uh, she has two sons and two daughter-in-laws, and everybody dies, right? Her two sons die. Her husband dies. There was a famine in the land of Judah, and they moved to Moab, which is across the Dead Sea, and which is east. We talked about that before, like moving east. A lot of times means moving away from the city. When you look at the map, really everything is east, away from the city. So if you're not moving east, you're going away from. If you're moving east, you're going away from Judah. And she's really hit with a lot of misfortune, and now she doesn't know what to do. It's time to gather her things, and she needs to go back home because she's heard that the famine is over. Things are going better back at home, and she's really lost everything. So does anybody want to kind of start off and say what they really get out of chapter 1?
I like to say that I thought it was interesting how she lost her faith that God was so against her, and that he turned his back on her because of what happened. And I know it was like devastating to lose your husband and your sons and everything like that, but she just gave up on God. Instead of calling him Yahweh, she called him God Almighty, thinking his destruction was upon her. And so she really lost her faith, but she didn't know it was a setup for God to bless her.
Yeah, I love that. So like things are going really bad for her. She's kind of really lost her faith. She refers to herself as Mara, which means the Lord has dealt bitterly with me. Right. This is she's really in a bad place. She's kind of in a faith struggle, a faith crisis, and and maybe she feels that way because she left the land of her fathers. They've gone into the land of Moab, which were idol worshippers. They did not worship Yahweh in the land of Moab. Does anybody know where the people of Moab stem from? They actually stem from Lot. When Lot has and his daughters commit incest after leaving the city of Sodom and Gomorrah, born are the people of Moab. So this is kind of a place of separation. They're not they're in a this is kind of, you really have gone into another land. You've worshipped another god. You're really married with a people. Your sons have married into a people that are not followers of God either, right? But she also hits a point where she's like, okay, she tells her daughter-in-laws, go back home. I'm going back to my home. You go back to your home. We're done. It's over for me. You're no longer committed to me. You don't owe me anything. Just let me go. And it's almost kind of like this place of depression and of like, I give up. God has dealt bitterly with me. I'm going to kind of go home and die kind of thing. Right. And one of the sisters, Orpah, she says, they kind of go back and forth, but then she eventually says, okay, I'm leaving. I'll go back home. Right. And then, but there's one daughter, Ruth, who says, most famously says, no, I'm not going anywhere. In fact, where you go, I will go. Where you live, I will live. Your God shall be my God, right? And I will follow you, right? Essentially, she says that she's going to follow Ruth. It says, your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if anything but death separates me and you. So she's made the commitment. She said, hey, no, I'm not going to leave you in this time. I think we could all use some friends who say, I'm not going to leave you in this time, in your hardest time where you're struggling and these things are difficult and you are having a faith crisis and you're losing your way and you're kind of like, okay, I don't know what to do now. All I do know what to do is to go home and die. And I don't think God's with me. I don't think I'm in his favor. He has dealt bitterly with me. You can call me Mara. If you remember in the book of Moses, there was the water of Mara, or however you say it, but it means bitterness, and the water was bitter, and they threw the log into the water. Just a fun reference. They threw the the wood into the water, and then it becomes sweet for them to drink. But that's a picture of Christ, right? But anyways, so Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi is kind of unprecedented. She doesn't owe her anything, and Ruth and Naomi says, "Hey, I can't bear sons for you. You can't wait for sons for me." And she's like, "It doesn't matter. I'm coming with you. I'm going to stick it out with you. We're going to kind of go together, and I'm not going to give up on you." So they go back, and they return to Bethlehem, and it is at the beginning of the barley harvest. So in chapter 2, I think, so I would like to point out, like, as a caveat to this scripture, the story of Ruth is really becomes a bigger picture of Christ. So when you think about it, you say, okay, like it falls into when you think about what does the story mean, why is it important? It really does represent a bigger picture in Christ. So I think we talked about before, like God does a lot of things. He could do a lot of things, but there's a lot of imagery and a lot of things that he puts into scripture that should be referenced and recognized, right? I think that it's interesting that they go into the barley harvest because, well, what's coming up now in our season right now? What are we about to go into? Easter, Passover. The barley harvest is considered the harvest of first fruits, and it is at the Passover time. Jesus is the first fruits, and his death and resurrection are going to happen at the time of around the barley harvest, right? So like they're going to be at similar time frames. Between March and April time period is really when that happens. Now, obviously, it's not exactly lined up with the American calendar because we changed it. So, but you see that they go back into Bethlehem, and they meet Boaz. Anybody want to talk about Boaz?
He ends up being their kinsman, their redeemer,
Their kinsman redeemer. Okay.
and he's very nice. He likes Ruth, and he's very nice to her. You know, he tells her to stay there and don't go to another field, to stay there with him. And he tells everybody else, the men, to leave her alone. So he's very protective of her, and really not really even knowing her. I'm not sure if he knew that he was the kinsman redeemer at that time when he first saw her.
Yeah.
But anyway, he was her protector.
Yeah. He does. It shows that he protects her. It kind of referenced that she goes into the field, and you'll kind of see. It mentions that he's a man of noble character. So he's a man of godly character. He's a man of noble character. He's an upright man, right? He's a good guy, you know. And I think it's important to recognize his character because it's gonna play into what he does and how he treats Naomi. How he treats Ruth. One thing I thought was interesting is it talks about, and you're seeing how they kind of fall really into, and he's abiding with Levitical law, and he's doing the things that are commanded by Moses, even to the point where she's going to, she gets a job essentially, says, hey, I'm going to go and pick up the leftover grains in the field of the barley harvest. So as the harvesters go through, I'll pick up the scraps essentially. And that was really in Leviticus 19, 9 through 10, it talks about how when they reap the harvest, they should leave some behind. It's intentional, right? They should leave some behind for the poor. So that's part of the law. So it's like saying, hey, as you're going through the fields, leave some behind. And Boaz, Naomi realizes this. She's like, ooh, that's our kinsman redeemer. He has he's a relative to he's a relative to my husband, and he has a kinsman redeemer. We talked about, you're saying, hey, he's a kinsman redeemer. It really means that he has the right to restore her and her belongings, and her husband's belongings, and her children's belongings. That he has a right to restore her to a rightful place in the community, and for her to have all the inheritance that came along that would have been her husband's, and it would allow her to then be kind of like in right standing in society again. You see that he comes in and he's kind of like, who is this young woman? And where is she from, and who is she? And she's a Moabite. So like you would think like, okay, well, maybe he's like, oh, well, but she's a foreigner essentially to him. But there's something that he sees about her, and he hears about her. They tell him about her, about how she's taking care of Naomi, and he finds that honorable. And so you see where her character kind of comes in, and like who she is. And I think that's important because like you're seen for your character, right? There's a time and a period where like you're known by your character and the person that you are, and how you uphold yourself and how you represent yourself. And you can really see that with Boaz. He's recognized in the community as a good man. Ruth is recognized for her. She's recognized for her compassion for Naomi and her commitment and loyalty to Naomi, that she's out there working for the family and bringing home the harvest.
Why does he call her my daughter? I think that's like a greeting. And he says, listen, my daughter. He just calls her that.
Well, there's an age gap. There's an age difference there between Boaz and Ruth. That there's a significant age gap there. So he refers to her as my daughter. But it's a term of endearment as well, right? But Carlene mentioned also that he protects her. Says, hey, don't go to anyone else's fields. Don't worry about going anywhere else. You come here every day, and we'll leave a little extra for you. And he begins to leave even more extra for her, and he keeps the guys off of her, right? Hey, the young men aren't going to mess with you. They're not gonna touch you. They've been ordered not to. You're going to be safe. He's really her protector. You mentioned that earlier, Carlene, that he was kind of her protector.
He's told her. He said he told the men not to treat her roughly, not necessarily to leave her alone, but it was to not treat her roughly, like treat her with disrespect. So they could still talk to her, but not disrespect her.
That's correct. I didn't mean it as in So when I meant that, well, yeah, and maybe I wasn't clear on it. I wasn't saying it like, okay, they couldn't talk to her. He wasn't isolating her. He was protecting her. Yeah, not to treat her roughly, right? Not to mess with her. Kind of like, hey, I'm taking care of her, right? And I think that you see that when you talk about the bigger picture, and you say, okay, Jesus takes care of us. He sees us. He's protecting us. He's providing for us. He recognizes he's not left us alone, right? So even in our hard times, like she's going through a hard time, just because our kinsman redeemer is there doesn't make everything better right now. But there's still a level of protection over her, and that
It's also, there's one verse in verse 14 that says you can dip your bread in the sour wine.
Yeah.
That's never. Didn't Jesus have to? Didn't he get like have a sponge, or like someone dipped someone dipped a sponge in sour wine to give him something to drink. In the crucifixion. They
did. Yeah, absolutely. So, and also if you think about it, Jesus at his Passover meal, right? They have communion. What do? They're eating of the bread and they're drinking of the wine. So it's I thought that was interesting as well when I saw it. It was like, hey, kind of like he invites her in to commune with her, to commune with him, right? So, hey, I'm inviting you in. Come sit down. You can have some of my bread and drink some of my wine, right? Dip into the wine. So you see almost like a level of communion happening, right, between the two of them. So I thought that was interesting as well, because really Boaz he's not Christ, obviously, but he is a picture of Christ, though, redeeming his church, right? Or redeeming the people. So Boaz is that he's the kinsman redeemer. He's the kinsman redeemer is the person who has the authority to restore you back to your original position, right? Or restore all of the things that you've lost. So you kind of see he's taking that type of role. That's really good. Anybody else get anything out of chapter 2?
Wasn't it when she said she ate all she wanted and still had some left over? And because when Jesus fed the 5,000, he had left over.
That's a great reference. And I think it really just kind of represents the abundance that she had, right? And it kind of represents his generosity of who Boaz was, right? Like she had enough, and then she still had some left over, and she ate her full and still had plenty left over. And you do see that when Jesus feeds the 5,000, and he goes through, and they still have some left over. That even with a little bit, she's dealing with the scraps, but she still has enough left over, and she's her kinsman redeemer has made it enough for her.
And she shares it with Naomi when she returns home too.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. So we kind of see how he's taking care of her, he's watching over her, and then we kind of go into chapter 3.
Well,
Okay, go ahead.
Before is in verse 20, and Ruth is telling Naomi what she did during the day and all this stuff, and who it was, and Boaz. And then Naomi says that the man is a close relative of ours. So he's one of our redeemers. So it was after she had worked that full day that she finds out that they're a relative.
That's correct. Okay, you're right. Yes, absolutely. She finds out they work, and Naomi's like, hey, that man is one of our kinsman redeemers. And so, yes. But Boaz finds out earlier that who she is and who, so Boaz knows, right? So Boaz knows because he asked his young men, who is this woman? And they explain what she's done for Naomi. And he says, may the Lord, in verse 12, it says, may the Lord reward you for what you have done. You may receive your full reward from the Lord God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. So he kind of speaks a blessing over her life, right? He's like, hey, the Lord sees you, and he's gonna, and then that's when they actually go and they break bread together.
And she gleaned till the end of the harvest.
She gleaned till the end of the harvest. So they go and they have now Ruth's mother-in-law kind of says, hey, he's showing you great favor, right? He's showing you a lot of favor, and he's going to be winnowing the barley on the threshing floor tonight. It's time to wash up, put on some perfume, wear your best clothes, right? It's time to put on your Sunday's best. He's the guy, you know. You're gonna want to make an impression, because tonight you're pretty much going to him. She's going to be going to him and asking him, kind of submitting herself to him at his feet to say, hey, redeem me, right?
So, excuse me, Is that what laying by his feet is in that culture, the tradition?
Yeah, so it was really a sign of humility, and it was a uh, you would lay at the feet almost like, but then when you lift the corner of the corner of his um, the corner of his robe there, it says actually the word was not robe, but the word was his covering, but it was his in the Hebrew it's like, oh, I'm mixing up my words now because I looked at it, but the talit.
Mhm.
And um actually, I was gonna bring one with me because Pastor gave me one time, but essentially it's like your prayer shawl, right? And it has an inscription over but when you have it hanging down, there on the corners of them are little tassels, like they're little fringes on the ends of them. So then, um, and a lot of times this word is used for covering or wings or um, it is it's a word, but it's really like a pressure, and actually people still hold them in their hands as they're praying at the wall and things like that. In Jerusalem, you guys went to Jerusalem. It was no,
We
you
didn't get to Jerusalem.
Oh,
We got cut off right then.
okay, yeah.
But we did get a lot of prayer shawls.
You did get the prayer shawls, yeah. So even like when you see the woman with the issue of the blood in the New Testament, it she reaches out and she grabs the fringe of his garment, right? And she's healed. Well, it's also referred to as wings, right? And you see earlier, Boaz said, may the Lord's rest in, take refuge under the wings of the Lord, right? Well, the Bible also tells us that there's healing in the wings, right? So like there's this and it's I'm probably saying it wrong, and pastor's like, don't butcher no, don't butcher that. But I'm pretty sure it's the talit, right? Is that right? No, yeah. So anyway, so it was a sign of. So then, if you were to cover the person with your talit, you've accepted them, right? You're covering them. You're now protecting them. They're under your protection now, right? So she takes a huge risk. This is not like a small thing for her though, right? This is a big time risk to go in and say, okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna lay at your feet and I'm gonna uncover your feet in hopes that he will cover her, right? So there's no little faith there. That's a great deal of faith. What if he rejects her? What if he says, what are you doing? Right? This is really like a proposal, essentially. Like, okay, take care of me. Take me under your wing. I need you to take me under your covering. I need to be put under your protection, right? So this is no little thing. That takes a great deal of faith to step out and to be brave and to say, hey, cover me. I think this is a real place of submission. We talked about a little bit earlier, where in the book where Much Afraid was, she came to a place of submission where all she wanted was the Lord, right? All she wanted was the shepherd. And this is really the place where Ruth is coming to. It's like, okay.
Was it custom for a woman to do, like, to make that first initiation like that? I mean,
So what I was reading about it was a known custom. So and he was aware of it because he does cover her and he's aware when it happens. I don't know how familiar that would be in the custom of that time as far as like with like how does it normally happen, but it wasn't unfamiliar to him either because his response is he covers her, right? And he knows what she's asking. Because when he gets up, he says, okay, well, because he's a righteous man, he says, okay, well, there's actually a relative that's closer than I am. But he looks at her and he sees her. And there was something he says, so Ruth says, your servant, she replied, when he says, So he asked her, "Who are you?" It's dark. And he says, "I'm Ruth, your servant. Take me under your wing, for you are my family redeemer." Right? Um, and then he responds, "You have shown more kindness now than before, because you not pursued younger men with richer, whether rich or poor." So what he's saying is like, you could have chosen anyone, really. Like this is, you're not, but you didn't do it based on those things, right? And he does realize that she's also doing this for Naomi as well, right? So she can be restored. It's the heart behind which she's doing it as well, right? So it becomes like she's going to be. It doesn't just help her. This helps her mother-in-law, right? Who she's not blood related to. That she went with her. She stuck by her. It really speaks a huge testament to her faithfulness and her faith to be able to step out and to be able to do this. Like you wouldn't normally. You're taking a big risk by doing that. There's a risk of rejection. I think that when you talk about like our walk with Christ as well, and saying, okay, well, our submission to Him, we often feel like, okay, well, I'm putting it all on the line here. We come to a place of surrender, right? And a place of we talked about earlier in the Heinz feet about kind of like a reckless abandonment, where you're kind of, okay, I'm going down, whatever this means. As long as I'm with you, I'm going down, and I need your covering, and I need your protection, and I need you to be with me. So when we talk about the Lord's covering and His protection over us, is say it's a matter of, hey, Lord, take me under your wing. I'm trusting you with everything I have, and I want to be. I need your redemption. I need to be restored. I'm in a hard way.
So, why did he tell her that no one must know that a woman came to the threshing floor? Why did he, if it was a custom, why would he say nobody needs to know that a woman in particular came to the threshing floor?
That's a good point. So, he's a man of honor and respect. He doesn't want her to be looked upon in a certain way, and he doesn't want his reputation to be viewed in a certain way either, right? Nothing happened between them, right? In this time, she's really submitting herself to him as like, hey, rescue me. But he's a man of honor, and he's a man of respect, and he's not even really next in line for as a family redeemer, right? He's not the one that will be next in line as a kinsman redeemer for her either. So he's not imposing upon anyone, right? And he doesn't want it to look a certain way on her or himself, I'm sure. But I would assume it's really mostly for her, the way it looks for her. Just the same as if you think.
Okay, so he says woman, he didn't say you, he says woman. So is a woman not supposed to go on the threshing floor?
That I don't know. So
That's why that was kind of like the question that I was asking, like she initiated it. She wasn't invited into, meet me here at the threshing floor.
she goes into the
Yeah.
threshing floor as she knows where he's going to be,
Right.
and she goes in as he's working and lays down. So she didn't know that he didn't know that she was there originally, because that's why he asked her in the nighttime, "Who are you?" So she kind of sneaks in the middle of the night. So I'm sure that's not a thing that you're not supposed to do that. That seems like very secretive, right? So like you're sneaking in the middle of the night to lay at his feet, right? So yeah, so I'm sure that's not a good thing, right? Especially he didn't know. He fell asleep and there she is. So, yeah. No, I agree. I think that's absolutely correct. She's not supposed to be there. He doesn't know that she's there until he wakes up. And that's why he asks, "Who are you?" And she says, I'm Ruth, your servant. Take me under your wing, for you are my family redeemer." And then even then he says, no, now don't be afraid, my daughter. I will do for you whatever you say, since all the people in the town know that you are a woman of noble character. He doesn't want her to be frowned upon.
So do you think Naomi knew something about the culture of the threshing floor in order for her to encourage her to do that?
It appears that way. It seems that way. She knew.
Set it up.
She knew that he'd go and be on the threshing floor, be tired, and have his fill and have his wine, and he'd lay down and be tired, you know. But she knew it was going to be the time because she plans it that way. She sets it up. She's aware of where he's going to be.
She's not supposed to be there.
Right. But she sets her up. She says, okay, clean up, get ready, put on your anointing oil, essentially, put on your perfume, you know, and go in and lay down on his feet. I need you to do exactly as I say, right? Which I think takes a level of faith as well. Hey, I need you to trust me on this. Just go in and for Ruth it does, for sure. I guess it's easy to tell somebody else to do it, but he tells her, stay here for the night, in the morning. And if he wants to redeem you, that's good. Let him redeem you. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, as the Lord lives, I will now lie down until the morning. And
He also gives her 6 scoops of barley.
he does.
So that would he gave me 6 scoops. Don't go back to him. So yeah, he did that to prevent her from being empty, from returning to her mother-in-law empty-handed. That goes back to his generosity and his thoughtfulness. He gives her something. He gives her food to take back to her mother.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, double back to him empty-handed. I would also say, is there?
On here it says, while women were present on threshing floors for work, the specific circumstances of Ruth's visit to Boaz's threshing floor at night were unusual and potentially scandalous.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
leading
like
Boaz to request secrecy.
Like say, hey, she could be there to get barley,
Yeah.
but being there overnight was a bit scandalous,
Yeah.
which is probably why he sent her back with barley too. Hey, you were here getting barley. No, just kidding. He was a man of honor, so he's going to send her back. It says, don't go back to your mother-in-law empty-handed. Wait until you find out how things go. So now, in Deuteronomy chapter 25, it kind of talks about the law and how this thing's supposed to go. If you have a brother who dies, and the next brother actually should take his wife and take care of them and continue on his lineage in this culture, in this circumstance. That's how it was supposed to be done. And they were to really, in Deuteronomy 25, it talks about if he does not take it. So it says, hey, if he doesn't take his wife, then you would take off. If he won't take care of his responsibility, then you take off your shoe, you hand your sandal over, and actually they spit in your face. Yeah. So, but in this case, they will go to chapter 4. And Boaz goes in and he speaks to, it says, do you, sorry. But if you do not want to, I'm trying to find the verse where it says that real quick. I'm sorry. I thought I highlighted it. Essentially, he says, hey, do you want to pursue? Do you want to Do you want to redeem her? Okay. I'm looking for the spot where it said I wanted to read it.
Yeah,
Essentially, he says,
4 and 3. You start somewhere around there, 4 and 3.
yeah, he says that it's too much risk for him. He doesn't want to take the risk on it. He doesn't want to lose his stuff that he has.
So, 6, 4 and 6.
There you go. It says, the Redeemer replied, I can't redeem it myself, or I will ruin my own inheritance. Take my right of redemption because I can't redeem it. So ultimately, the Redeemer is not going to, the person who's rightfully able to redeem her is not going to redeem her because it costs him too much. He don't want to lose what he's got. He doesn't want to, it's not worth it to him, which to me is very telling, right? And when you talk about a picture of Christ, you're worth it to Christ, right? Like, so for Boaz to go out there and to say, I'll redeem her. I'll take her, right? Then it becomes like, okay, the picture of Christ saying, she's worth it to me, right? And if we're the body of Christ and we are the church of Christ and we're the bride of Christ, that's really what he's done for us. It says he is our kinsman redeemer. He is the one who, although we were the foreigner and the stranger and the person who was far away from God, he sacrifices or takes the risk himself. He sacrifices himself for us and is our kinsman redeemer. He has all the right to do so. He's now the only one with the right to do so, that this person forfeited the right? Christ is the only one really who legally could set us free from sin and death. He's the only one who could redeem us to himself because he's the only one without sin and he is the only rightful heir to the throne, right? So that is really what this is all about, is a picture of Christ being our kinsman redeemer and what it represents and how he draws us back into covenant, even though we're outsiders. And you would think, okay, well, who is this person, Ruth, that he would care for her? And I think the same question could be asked for us. Who are we that Christ would care for us enough to die for us and to sacrifice himself for us?
You referred to Deuteronomy, talking about some of the different characteristics of the kinsman redeemer.
Mhm.
And I had marked in my Bible, if you go back to Numbers, the word kinsman redeemer is not used, but the principle of that kinsman redeemer is there in Numbers 27, 1 through 11. And it's just interesting. There was a man who was killed at the time of Korah's rebellion, and he had no sons. And his daughters went to petition Moses at the tent of meetings, and the priest was there. And they begin to pour out their heart about they don't have an inheritance. They don't have anyone to stand for them.
Mhm.
And so Moses goes to God and prays and talks to God about it. And God tells him the daughters are right. They have a right to the inheritance of the father. And to me, it was just like I said, it's not the full-blown picture. But it's kind of like the very beginnings of this idea that God was going to provide for the needs of the family.
Yeah.
And I just really like that.
No, I love that. I think that's awesome. That's a great scripture to use for that. I think that's really good too. Yeah. And I think that when you think about like that, they consider everything lost. If you look at Naomi when she starts, everything's lost. She's bitter. God is against her. There is no chance for me. There's nothing left for me. And I'm sure there's rumor around town because when she comes in, it mentions that the ladies say, "Oh, Naomi, there you are," right? Like, and it's like, don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, right? And there's this level of distraughtness. And I think that when you talk about this kinsman redeemer doesn't want to redeem her. I mean, I don't know how well known that is to her, but I imagine she hasn't been redeemed yet by him, and he knows his right to her. He knows where he's related to her husband, right? In the part of the family in which he falls, and he's not taken the opportunity to redeem them. But there's a righteous man. There's a righteous man named Boaz who's going to come in and do you say restoring the daughters, the whole family, right? You then restore the whole family, which was lost, and that's encouraging and hope. That's all what we all want, right? Is the families to be restored, and I know I do. That's what I want to see is families restored and people restored to God. It's really good.
I like how when the deal was made between Boaz and the other kinsmen, they didn't shake hands like they do in the westerns or a long time ago. You know, the deal is you shake hands, but Boaz gave him his sandal,
Mm-hmm.
and that was how that they sealed the deal then. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. And that would have been bounded by God's law, right? Because that was a requirement. So that would have been him maintaining God's law, and it kind of, you trade your sandal, you probably walk a little different, with sandal.
Yeah, it was the other family redeemer who gave Boaz his sandal, not. It was the other family redeemer who gave. No, yeah.
Because he can't.
It was-
So the Redeemer removed his sandal and said to Boaz, buy back the property yourself.
Yeah.
Because he has to uphold the law. Where we said earlier in Deuteronomy 25, it says, hey, if he doesn't, then, now it doesn't say that Boaz spit in his face, but he does remove his sandal,
The other family redeemer removes his sandal, not Boaz removes his sandal.
Yeah, you can't walk the same. Yeah. Buy back the property yourself. So it's going to cost Boaz
Yeah.
also, right? Because he still has to buy it back. And now he's responsible.
Yeah.
I'm buying from Naomi everything that belonged to Elimelech, Shalon, and Mahlon. I've also acquired Ruth, the Moabitess, and Mahlon's wife, a widow, as my wife. So he's going to carry on the names of the sons. He's going to carry those things on and allow their family name to continue, which when we look at where it goes then is when you look at the family line. Now Ruth will be brought into the family line of David, right? Now Ruth is now Christ will end up being a direct descendant of Ruth, which is pretty cool because we talked about Jericho and how we talked about Jericho, right? And how oh my goodness, I'm drawing a blank. Rahab on the wall she's a Canaanite. She's inside of the enemy's territory. She belongs to them. They essentially say, hey, we will protect you because she submits to God being her God. She says, hey, your Lord be my Lord, and I'll follow your people, right? It's similar to Ruth's situation. She submits herself to God, says, hey, I've seen what God has done for you. And she's admitted into the family line of Jesus. And then you go to Ruth, and she is a Moabite woman, and she is now brought into the family line of Jesus. So that's a real story of redemption, right? You come from being an outsider, a foreigner who has no right, and no property, and nothing, and everything you have is gone, and you're brought in to the family line of the Messiah. She doesn't know that, right? But we do. So that's a pretty cool picture for us, because when we think about the representation of the church, that realistically the chosen people are the Jews, right? They're Israel, right? but we're grafted in. So God has brought us in as he's redeemed us. He is our kinsman redeemer and has brought us in as children, as his own children, and adopted us as sons and daughters, that we can be, that we can experience the fullness of our inheritance, as Ruth is going to be able to experience the fullness of her inheritance, right? So I think that's the coolest. I think it's really cool because God takes people who are unexpected. He takes people who feel unworthy. He takes people who are from different walks of life, who you wouldn't ever expect, and he draws them into the family. I think that leaves us with a great deal of hope that it's not the person that you expect. It's not the person that maybe that person doesn't have it all together. And we look at people a lot of times with status, stature, whatever, and where they come from, who their family line is, where different facts about them that would make them seem appealing to us. But God doesn't see those things. God sees the heart. He sees Ruth, who's faithful to her mother-in-law, who abandons everything, who had the choice to leave, but chose to stay. And he draws her into that, to the family line of the Messiah. That's a pretty big honor, right? Like you'll go into, that's a pretty big deal. And then he'll later do it with David, right? Because it still doesn't become, and just because Ruth comes into the family line, it's not like, okay, now this family's real noble because it's Boaz and Ruth, and now they're doing their thing. Really, Jesse has a bunch of sons, right? And he'll choose, and Samuel will choose David to be king. So it becomes like God has and then Jesus will come in, right? And you'll say, oh, who's Mary, right? She's not royalty. She's not this whatever, but he uses a woman with a humble servant heart who loves the Lord and who is similar to Ruth in this way. And then she will carry the Messiah. Like it's not always the way we think it's going to look. It's not always the way that we think it should go, and it's not always the person that we view things differently than God does. God sees the hearts of people. He knows, sees their humility. He sees their commitment to him. He sees their love for him.
He also mentions from verses 11 through 12, we are witnesses. May the Lord make this woman who's coming into your home like Rachel and Leah, from whom all the nation of Israel descended. And may the Lord give you descendants by this young woman who will be like those of our ancestor Perez, the son of Tamar and Judah. So the significance behind that is, Ruth should be modeled after those two women and man. To me, in the same verse 11 through 12, that she should be modeled, or she should be.
I says, may your house become like the house of Perez, the son of Tamar, bore to Judah, because of the offspring the Lord will give you by this young woman. I think that's interesting because, first off, the Messiah's family line will come from Judah. But I also think that it's interesting because Judah, they rejected Tamar. Judah's son died, right? And the other brother didn't want Tamar. And Judah sees Tamar on the street and assumes that she is a prostitute and sleeps with her. And then he later goes back and she takes his scepter, right? And she later goes back and says, hey, these items belong to you. Because he's like, oh, you're a prostitute and you're pregnant. How'd this happen? And he's like, no. The man who left me these things is the baby's father, right? So I think it's interesting in telling that is the example that's used, is Tamar bore to Judah, because that was also an instance where the Redeemer should have taken in Tamar, and she was rejected by the rightful family Redeemer, and then Judah he realizes his sin against God, and he'll end up taking Tamar in, right? Well, he's gonna have a baby with Tamar. So, and then obviously the line comes from Judah, that the scepter shall not depart from Judah was a blessing on Judah, that the rightful heir to the throne doesn't depart from Judah. Judah in location is where Jerusalem is located. Judah is the southern kingdom, even after the split, and right. So it's like Jerusalem is where the temple is set up, right? And this place that you guys, I think that like there's a lot tied to Judah and Tamar, but I do think that it's interesting because it references Tamar, especially in Perez, the son of Tamar, because it's like, hey, that was a pretty scandalous situation. When you look at, so to me, like some of the things that you look in the Bible, some of these things are scandalous. And if you were to see them in the church today, you would be like, oh my, right? But like people have made mistakes throughout the Bible and they do things that are not necessarily the right things, but God works all things together for the good for those who love God and are called according to his purposes. It's not that, right? So God can bring these things together and he can make them work out for his purposes and the things that he has intended them to do. And his promises will come about no matter what. Anybody else have anything they want to add?
I just want to just mention, I found this insight of the Book of Ruth really good because most often the Book of Ruth is based on marriage principles and how to carry yourself as a woman and how Boaz is the man looking for a wife. So most often it's taught like that, the Book of Ruth. is
Oh, yeah?
for marriage, yeah.
Huh. Yeah. I'll be honest with you, I've never heard it taught like that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
In the black church.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's really just a picture of Christ.
Yeah, I've never heard it in that manner. It's always about marriage.
Yeah.
It's always about the woman waiting for her Boaz.
Her Boaz to come.
That's usually how it's taught.
Well, you have your Boaz. He's Jesus. Your Boaz is Jesus. I have a Boaz. He's Jesus. You know, he's the one who redeems us from our places where we didn't think we could come back from. Right. So yeah, no, that's interesting.
This was interesting to see that perspective on it.
All right. So, didn't know, what do you guys want to do next week? Samuel? We will do Samuel? That's when, we got one for Samuel. Dave says Samuel. Yeah,
I'm
okay.
watching the TV show, so.
Oh, great. Yeah, let's do it.
House of David.
The House of David?
So
Yeah.
that's why.
Okay.
It's so good.
Yeah, I've watched it too. I haven't watched all of it, but I've watched some of it. House of David. So yeah, we can do Samuel. I love Samuel. So
House of David was.
it's a TV show. It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh.
I'll be-
Every Thursday they have a new series so far.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, not series, but episode.
Yeah, I thought there's a little extra in there to kind of help you along to make it more fun. But as far as like they need a lot of details, they got a lot of episodes to make, and they got to make a show, right? But there's a lot of really good stuff in there too, and it's very good. I thought it was very good as well. I've had fun watching that as well.
How many, so it's on Amazon Prime, and how many, is it in the first or second season?
First season.
First.
How many episodes?
We don't know, because every Thursday is a new episode.
Oh.
Yeah, so I think right now it's like they're up to like probably episode 8, 9, something like that.
So-
I think the
yeah,
last
so
one
good.
is gonna be this week,
Is that right? Okay.
I think when he fights Goliath.
Okay. Yeah.
Go back and watch.
For this season. I think.
Yeah.
This is, I think.
Okay. Sounds good. So we'll start with Samuel. We'll see how Samuel kind of comes up and how he becomes the mighty prophet or the last judge, right?
How many chapters?
let's do, so you have Hannah's vow, that's important. Let's do 1, 2, Samuel's call as a boy. Let's do 4. How about that?
Chapter 4.
Mm-hmm.
To 4, up to
1 through 4 or? chapter
Yeah,
four?
1 through 4. 1 through 4. Heart hand over to Philistines. Yeah. Okay, that sounds good. All right, so all hearts and minds are clear. Then we will meet next week and do 1 Samuel chapters